Hello and welcome to One Family Scholars, first ever virtual leadership forum. I'm Jonelle Olivenza, Senior Coach for the One Family Scholars Program here at One Family. And in my role as a Senior Coach, my goal is to fully support all scholars up until graduation and just making sure that you all get to the finish line. We are so excited to have you all here today with us. Our theme this year is using your voice to advocate for change, and we cannot wait to get started. Today's session will involve a great panel discussion with some of One Family's advocacy team members and our Director of Public Policy, Brad Kramer. Again, we're really excited to have you join us. Now, I'll kick it over to Brad and the A-Team panel so we can learn more about how you can use your voice to advocate for change. Brad?
Thank you, Janelle. My name is Brad Kramer, and I am the Director of Public Policy here at One Family. Before I introduce our panelists and we jump into the discussion, I think it's important to get a clear understanding of what it is we mean by advocacy and what the point of doing it is in the first place. So yeah, what are we talking about when we're asking about advocacy? What is advocacy? Advocacy can mean different things in different situations. The kind of advocacy that we're talking about today is making the case for laws, funding, and policies to help people and bring about positive change. Advocacy is not a solo activity, it's a group activity where like-minded people come together to make a difference. At the heart of advocacy is making your voice heard. And as you'll be hearing from today's panelists, one of the key central strategies in effective advocacy involves sharing your story with elected officials, other government officials, and their staff. They want to hear your story, and you are the one who can put a human face on the issue that you're advocating for. So now we know what advocacy is, but why do it? For me, the answer to the question, why advocate, is captured by a quote from author and Native American rights activist, Shane Stokes. If you want to bring change to the world, speak up. To me, that's what advocacy is all about and why we do it. It's about speaking up to change our world for the better. All right, so we know what advocacy is and why it's important to do. Here are some examples of successful advocacy movements that are an important part of America's history. The fight for women getting the right to vote, known as the women's suffrage movement, which culminated in ratification of the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution in 1920, guaranteeing women the right to vote. The civil rights movement, while the struggle for Black Americans and their allies for justice and equity is far from over, the civil rights movement has achieved important victories along the way. The movement to secure rights for people with disabilities. And some more recent examples of successful advocacy campaigns right here in Massachusetts. One example, the Raise Up Massachusetts campaign that put the minimum wage on track to reach $15 an hour next year and gave paid family and medical leave to all Massachusetts workers. And one last example of a recent successful advocacy campaign, in 2018, One Family and our coalition partners at the Healthy Families EITC Coalition successfully advocated for a bigger state earned income tax credit, the EITC, to put more money in the pockets of low income and moderate income working families in Massachusetts. And a quick plug here, if you have not yet claimed your EITC money, visit this website to find out how to claim yours. So that's findyourfunds.org and find out how to claim your EITC money. Okay, so now that we've covered some examples of successful advocacy, including one example of something that One Family recently advocated for successfully, let's take a look at some of the other things that One Family advocates for. Helping families achieve housing stability through education and career success is at the heart of what One Family does. And in our advocacy work, this means investing in higher education, financial aid, and college success, including funding for the One Family Scholars Program. I just mentioned EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit. And while we and our advocacy partners at the Healthy Families EITC Coalition have had some great success here, we're not stopping there. We're advocating for further strengthening the EITC so that families can meet basic expenses while on the road to self-sufficiency and housing stability. One Family also advocates for additional homelessness prevention strategies. This includes increased investment in affordable homes, the RAFT Emergency Rent Payment Assistance Program, so people experiencing a housing crisis can remain in their home, MRVP housing vouchers, and protection from eviction. But our work would not be complete if we didn't advocate for ending the rampant discrimination that takes place every day in Massachusetts against people of color and people with housing vouchers seeking to rent an apartment, which is what we're doing as one of the leaders of the Coalition to End Housing Discrimination. Next, I want to give a shout out to One Family's greatest advocates, and that's you, One Family scholars, One Family alums, C2C participants. When you see an action alert email from One Family like this one, please open it and take action. It's your chance to share your story to advocate for preventing family homelessness and for pathways to family self-sufficiency. All it takes to make your voice heard is a few clicks and a few minutes. So when you get an action alert, please click the green button to take action. And finally, here are the members of One Family's advocacy team, sometimes referred to as the A-Team. I'm looking forward to introducing you to 3 A-Team members today. These are the One Family scholars, One Family Scholar alums, and C2C participants who are most actively involved with advocacy at One Family. We're continuing to expand the A-Team, so perhaps you'll join us. So that is a little bit about what advocacy is, why we do it, what One Family advocates for, and how you can get involved. Today, I'm joined by 3 members of the One Family advocacy team. Gloria Cabrera and Valerie Galveo, who are the co-chairs of One Family's advocacy team, and Milagros Sanchez Gatong. Thank you, panelists, for joining us for today's conversation and for taking the time to speak with our current and former One Family program participants, our One Family scholars and C2C participants about your experience with and your perspectives on using your voice to advocate for change. So welcome to our panel. First, I'd like to start out by asking you to share a little bit about yourselves, as well as why you joined the One Family advocacy team, and maybe a little bit about, did you have any advocacy experience prior to that? So I want to start with Millie. Millie, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. So I am from New York City. I moved to Massachusetts, escaping from my abuser. And the reason why advocacy is so important to me is because as a person who was held back and I wasn't allowed to use my voice, I guess after years passed, it developed a fire within me to advocate. I would hate to see other people going through what I went through, and seeing how free I am today, how accomplished I am today. I would love to be an example for others who feel that their voices are not being heard, and inspire them so that they can use their voice and know that they are important, and their voice do matter. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Millie. That was really powerful and really inspiring. And did you have, before you joined One Family's advocacy team, did you have much advocacy experience before that?
Yeah, so as I transitioned out of New York, I moved to the New Bedford, Bristol County area. I became involved with an organization called the Women's Fund. I was a women's advocacy representative, so there was a lot of things that were taught to me and became passionate about. about uplifting women and children who are underserved. I was also at the State House when Governor Baker signed the Equal Pay Bill. I also brought my daughters to the Women's March that happened in New Bedford a couple of years ago. And among other things, I'm always at the State House. And then a couple of years ago, during one of my internships at Simmons University, I was able to intern at the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women. There, I was able to help organize and plan Advocacy Day and other huge events that happen there. I'm really excited about this journey. And when I saw that one family had an opening, I just jumped right in because not only I believe in the mission, I lived it myself as a scholar, and I would love to be part of a change, even if it's just a little help that I'm contributing to.
Well, Millie, thank you for bringing your lived experience and your wealth of prior advocacy experience to the A-Team. Next, I want to ask same question to you, Valerie. Can you just share a little bit about yourself and then talk about why you decided to join the advocacy team and if you had advocacy experience prior to that?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Valerie Galveo, and I am a One Family scholar. I am one of the co-chairs of the One Family Advocacy team. I am a first-generation college student. I graduated from Middlesex Community College with my associate's degree in human services and transferred to Salem State University, where I'm currently pursuing my bachelor's degree in social work. I am a single mom to my son. He is my pride and joy. And I also work at a residential program with young parents, and I enjoy doing lots of community work. And I joined the advocacy team because it's important to me to have my voice heard, to advocate for issues that are important to me while helping others that may have gone through similar situations, and just bringing awareness. And I have done some advocacy work before, for different organizations that I'm passionate about, but never on a public policy level. So yeah.
And here you are, co-chair of the One Family Advocacy team. Great, thank you, Valerie. Now I'm going to turn to our other co-chair, Gloria. And same question, Gloria. Can you just share with the audience a little bit about you and what got you interested in joining the advocacy team and whether you had done much advocacy before that?
Hi, yes, thanks for having me. My name is Gloria. I'm a mother of 2 children. I'm also a One Family Scholar alumni. Also part of the One Family Advocacy team co-chair. I joined the One Family Advocacy team because I wanted to make a change in today's society. And also I feel like it's important for us to use our voices so we can be heard and make changes. Before joining the One Family Advocacy team, I don't have any other advocacy experience. So this is my first time actually advocating. And so I really enjoy the experience and hope to continue using my voice.
Thank you, Gloria. So I'd like to ask my next question to you, Millie. So Millie, you've done a lot of advocacy, not just with the One Family A-Team, as we call it, but before that, a tremendous amount. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about some like the specific advocacy experiences that you have that stand out for you. Like if you can just share some memories of advocacy experiences, and also, would you say you were always a natural born advocate, or is it something that you grow into?
Yeah. So for your first question, I feel like each experience has been huge, but there is part of the equal pay bill. I was able to gather information from other participants. It was about 30 of us, and collecting all those stories and hearing how vulnerable they were about they're being underpaid, and collecting signatures. And I feel like that one stands out a lot, because it's so real to hear their voices and know that we all share something in common. And even if I was the only one who was able to present this testimony at the State House, it wasn't like I was just sharing my story. I was sharing other women's stories, and to me, that's powerful. I guess something about advocacy is, we become vulnerable, and I've never been ashamed of my story. It's on the opposite side, it empowers me. I don't feel ashamed. I feel empowered. And to me, that's huge. I'm a mother. I have 3 beautiful girls, and the oldest ones are 16 years old. And it is something that I love teaching them. I love when they get involved in this advocacy process, because I'm teaching that generation. I do remember years ago when I lived in New York, hearing my parents, I'm the only one that speak English, so they will complain about stuff that's happening in the building, stuff that's happening in the streets, and I didn't know any better, that I could go and use my voice, and we don't have to suffer, we don't have to complain all the time. Now these are things that I talk to them and I teach them, hey, you should probably reach out to someone and let them know, I know my rights, and I should, use my voice. And to me, that's huge. So I would say it wasn't something natural that just started, I guess, being held back, and building that inner fire to fight, fight systems and fight, injustices. I feel like it's something in me that grew from being held back for so long. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Millie. Valerie, I'm going to turn to you next and ask you a question about testimony that you gave. You testified on legislation at the State House in Boston. Can you share with our audience, what was that like? Were you nervous, and how did you prepare, and how did you think about what did you think about it all? How did you feel about how it went?
So the experience for me was, I was there to share my testimony for legislation for families that were experiencing housing crisis and at risk of losing their homes. And so the bill would provide assistance for those families that were experiencing rental arrears and needed help with making payments on their rent. And what it was like for me was very nerve-wracking. I have done some public speaking, but I'm an introvert at heart. So it was very nerve-wracking. But once I got there, you, Brad, were amazing at helping me prepare for that experience. That was very helpful. We practiced a few times before the day actually happened, and you had it all printed out for me. And you were always keeping like the communication open as to like what was happening, and checking in with me and just letting me know like when our time was coming up to speak. So we're in a large room with a lot of people that are there to testify for the same bill and other bills. And there's a panel of people. And so we sat at a large table and you were sitting next to me, and it was great that I had my testimony all there in front of me. So I just read off what we had prepared, and the experience was very empowering because being in a room full of people, yes, it is nerve-wracking, but sharing my story and knowing that it's going to, be considered when decisions are being made about that bill, there's a lot of power in that. And once I was done with my piece of it, I felt relieved that although was, afraid, I had some fears and nervous about it, I still, decided to go through with it because I know that, the bigger picture was that I was, sharing my story to help others and advocate for a bill that was very necessary and important to not only me, but to other, people in the Commonwealth. So yeah, after I was done with that experience, I felt like I could, go back tomorrow and do it again. I just caught like the bug of wanting to do more advocacy work. So I'm glad that I did have that experience.
Me too. And I remember that day too. You were awesome. And just so the audience knows that I was not there for support. I gave testimony. As I recall, the legislators seemed more interested in hearing what Valerie had to say because she was sharing from her lived experience, which is really powerful. Thank you, Valerie. Gloria, you've done quite a lot as a member and co-chair of the advocacy team. You've been a panelist at a virtual town hall, sharing your perspective on the experiences of families during the pandemic and how well or not well government efforts to help families during the pandemic have been working. More recently, you participated in 2 very successful advocacy meetings, one with your state representative and one with your state senator, both of who committed to supporting more funding for One Family Scholars, the One Family Scholars program, after hearing your story. What I'm wondering is, can you tell our audience, what is it like to share some of your personal story, your own, very personal journey in those settings? And is doing that something that comes naturally to you or something that is taking time getting used to?
So my experience advocating would be that it can be nerve-wracking at first. And I know that it really puts you in a vulnerable position to tell your story. But also at the same time, after doing it one time or more, you feel that power, like, oh, my voice is making a difference. So after that one time, you feel good about it, knowing that you're making a change by using your voice and sometimes speaking for others. So I think it comes natural after the first time, you're doing it for a good cause. But Yeah, I love advocating and we'll do it over and over again because I know it makes a difference.
Sure does. Thank you very much, Gloria. All right. My next question is, I'm going to ask the same question to all three panelists. And the question is, what are some advocacy do's and advocacy don'ts that you can share with our audience? And Millie, let's start with you.
So for me, I would say one of the advocacy do is to make sure that you connect your personal story to the bill or to the issue that you are advocating for. And one of the don'ts is be mindful of the time and make sure that you keep your answer clear, short, and sweet. And being respectful of everyone's time. I know those meetings can tend to be long, but being respectful of everyone's time.
Good advice. Thanks. Valerie, how about you? What advocacy do's and don'ts would you like to share with our audience?
Yeah, so one important advocacy do would be very specific about what it is that you're asking the elected official to do. For example, perhaps you want them to co-sponsor a particular piece of legislation, or maybe you'd like them to include funding for a particular program as one of their budget priorities. An important don't would definitely be do not get into an argument with the elected official. Getting into an argument would not be helpful to your cause.
Great. Thank you, Valerie. And Gloria, how about you? What are some advocacy do's and don'ts that you can share with our audience?
So one advocacy do is if someone asks you a question and you don't know the information, do tell them that you will follow up with them once you get that information. Also, an advocacy don't be disappointed if an elected official that you were hoping to be is not there. Also, it's important to show the staff that you appreciate their time. And it's also really helpful to develop a relationship with the elected official and their staff.
Great, thanks. So I'd like to ask one final question for each of our advocacy team members on the panel today. And the question is, what have you learned about doing advocacy that you'd like to share with our audience? And Millie, let's start with you.
Yeah, so as you know, I am in school getting a master's in social work, and this experience has definitely helped me a lot with my learning at school. I took a policy class and I felt so prepared because of everything I've learned, through personal and volunteer work around advocacy. And one huge learning is making sure that my story or what I want to share, what I'm advocating for, it's clear. And I know I mentioned like connecting the two, but I feel like sometimes we can recite and we can write down exactly what we want to share, but when you take that personal life experience and you add it to that testimony, it makes a huge difference. During one of my most recent meetings that I had at the State House, it was for in favor of the increasing ARPA funds, and I remember after I shared, one of the members thanked me and used my name, it looked like she was listening to what I was sharing, and she said, "This is very helpful." So when you share, when I share my story and I share, how that is affecting me or affected me, the issue that we are advocating for, I feel like it gives it more power, and to me that's a huge learning. And as time passed, I've become a little bit better and a little bit more comfortable, um, by being vulnerable with the issue.
Thank you very much, Millie. Valerie, how about you? What would you say is something that you've learned about doing advocacy that you can share with the audience?
One thing that I learned about advocacy is the elected official staff person might not always remember your name, but they're going to remember how they felt with you sharing your story. I know for me, when I'm sharing my story, it can be emotional. It's my personal lived experience. And sharing that vulnerability and that emotion will have an impact, and they will remember maybe not my name, but they're going to remember how I made them feel. And so I think that's very powerful. And also for me, advocacy also gives purpose to what I went through. And in that, there is so much healing and confidence that comes with that. So that is, one of the most important things that I learned through advocacy.
Thank you, Valerie. And then finally, Gloria, how about you? What would you like to share about what you've learned about doing advocacy with our audience?
Yeah, so, as my first time advocating for one family and advocating in general, I learned a lot of things throughout the way. I think sometimes someone can feel like your voice or your story is not enough, but I want to say that every story is important and every story should be heard. So always feel confident about your story, because your story is your story and no one else can tell you otherwise. So I think it's important for you to share your story and to know that we all have a voice, that we can make a difference, make a change. And so something that I learned through my journey with advocating.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Well, we've come to the end of the conversation, so I would just like to thank our three panelists, Millie and Valerie and Gloria, for your time. And I thought it was a really great conversation. And I think that a lot of our scholars and alums and C2C participants will be inspired to get involved in advocacy themselves. And who knows, maybe even join One Family's advocacy team. So thank you all again for sharing, for taking the time to be with us and sharing your experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon. We hope to hear from you and hear all about how you're using your voice to advocate for change. If you have any questions about today's presentation, please feel free to reach out to your coach, and we hope to see you all again soon.